Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I love hunting cards. I love to seek them out and to play them because it's fun.
Shh, there's a card right over there. Shh, shh.
Okay.
Draw your bow. Get it ready. Welcome to Card Talk, the ASMR show. Hello, everybody.
Maybe that's a thing, like the sounds of tokens, like like
right.
Oh boy.
Anyways, we have a great show for you today. See, I will take over the great show moniker from Ted. Last week I called him out for talking about the wonderful show lined up. But before we talk about that, let me just give everybody an opportunity to connect with us in a lot of different ways. We have a blog. Matt keeps up the blog amazingly. He releases a written a written review of the cards that we do here on the blog. So you got a lot of perspective about about the card. And then so you can go to cardtalk2018.com. You can follow us over there. We have a YouTube channel. You can follow us there. Card Talk and LOTR LCG podcast. We have the audio shows. We have this thing called Second Breakfast. A friend of the show, Micah, he decided to do this for us where every other Sunday he plays some scenario, has some deck building challenges. So he's doing that over on our YouTube channel. And then we have a Patreon. So if you want to become a patron of the show, just right over here, you can see, it's probably down right about here. You can see patreon.com/cardtalk2018 to become a friend of the show and help us with all the things that we need to do to keep the show going. So I've kind of made my way through the tall grass, and now it's time to talk about the card. So Ted, what card are we doing today?
Well, speaking of tall grass, David, you may be searching for enemies in that tall grass. And not necessarily Pokemon, but enemies. And to help you find those enemies, we bring the card to you today, which is the Dunedain Hunter. The Dunedain Hunter is a ally from the tactic sphere. He has a 0 cost.
Woo! 0 cost. He must stink.
Well, let's get to that. Let's get to that. He's got 1 willpower, 3 attack, 1 defense, and 3 hit points. What a deal, you say?
Yeah.
Why would a card like that cost 0?
Right.
I'll tell you why, Dave.
Yeah.
He has a forced response. He's also traded Dunedain and Ranger. He has a forced response. After Dunedain Hunter enters play, search the top 5 cards of the encounter deck for a non-unique enemy and put it into play engaged with you. If no enemy enters play by this effect, discard Dunedain Hunter, shuffle the encounter deck.
Yeah. Whew. That's crazy. So let me just say,
Are you a gambling man?
Before we get into some of our more serious discussion about this card could also be an encounter card and a bad guy. It doesn't necessarily have to be a man who is a Dunedain who is out hunting, but it also could have been an orc who is hunting Dunedain. So there could be
a hunter of Dunedain.
Right, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
right, okay,
it could be a Dunedain hunter. This could be an encounter card, which is interesting because the forced effect wants you to root through the encounter deck. Anyways, all of that aside, let me just say that this is one of those cards that is to me, it feels like a guarded card, right? Because when you play this card, it doesn't reduce the amount of cards that you are revealing from the encounter deck. It's not like Wait No Longer. I think we talked about that last show when we were talking about Halbarad. It's just the cost of putting this guy into play is that you have to have an enemy that's engaged, that you have to put engaged with you. And so for the great number of builds that people are going to be putting together, you're probably going to be rolling the dice that you're going to come across an enemy that you can handle. You're also not going to play this guy in the first round when there's a chance that you're going to pull out another hill troll or a marsh adder or something like that. You're going to play this card when you feel like you can afford the enemy. Now, it's good because this guy has a lot of attack, so you probably your hope to kill the enemy first time around, right?
Yeah, three attacks a lot, and he's even got 1 defense and 3 hit points, so he could even do some blocking and live. Right?
Right. Yes. So all of that to say is that kind of outside the Dunedain archetype, I don't know if this guy is found in all these crazy decks, right? He's not like a utilitarian card that you put, because if you pull this card out and you get some strong enemy and then you have to defend it with the Dunedain Hunter, now you've just got a net negative, right? You still have the enemy and you've defended it with the Dunedain Hunter and the Dunedain Hunter's gone. And now you have to deal with the enemy still. So but if you're playing the Dunedain deck that kind of triggers off of engaging enemies, Halbrand, Amarthiel, Aragorn, all of the Dunedain, I think that this guy becomes better. Now, there is one place, and I'm going to have to put this guy in that deck right now, right after we record, is I have an encounter scrying deck that's is tactics and lore, and so I use I may have changed it, but anyways, there's one version of it where I use tactics, and I'm using Risk Some Light and Farsighted, where you can kind of control what cards are coming out of the encounter deck. Furial, Denethor, those sorts of things. So in that deck, this guy would be phenomenal. Because you know what the enemies are, you know what's coming up, you know how to deal with it. You can... So
if you may have already looked at the top 1 or 2 cards.
Yeah, Farsighted allows you to look at the top 5.
Right. So you could...
So you get that.
Use that to kind of guarantee that he'll enter play. Because I've had him miss before. I've put him into play, and if you don't find an enemy, he immediately leaves play.
Right.
So that can happen.
Right. And the upsetting thing is that, not the upsetting thing is, but if you do have some encounter scrying or encounter, deck that uses Farsighted and some light and some of those cards, Furial, those 5 cards get shuffled back in, and it shuffles up the deck, so you lose the knowledge of the next cards. So that's one of the things that's frustrating, right?
Yeah, you have to trade it.
You're trading the knowledge of what's coming up
for
this guy to be in play, which sometimes isn't worth it, but sometimes is. So I don't know. So this guy is, I would guess, I'm going to put him in the... I don't necessarily like to play this guy solo, but I don't know. I can see his benefit in that Dunedain deck and some other decks.
Yeah. I think you make a great point. He definitely fits in the Dunedain archetype. Where you want to be engaging enemies, he puts one into play with you during the planning phase, which can give you other benefits for the 2 heroes you mentioned, Amarthiel, Halbarad. There's that Dunedain attachment, which reduces the cost of allies. It's called Heir of Valendil sounds correct. Yes. So you get a lot of other benefits on top of having this really strong ally. But I will mention that there are some other great heroes that this card pairs with. Two of which are your beloved hobbits, Dave, right? Because if you play him with Sam Gamgee,
Right.
if you engage an enemy that's higher than your cost, which again you're rolling the dice on, he'll get his boost. He'll probably be ready already, but he gets his stat boost. That still triggers. He also pairs okay with Tom Cotton for the same thing, right? If you get an enemy engage with you, then he gets his ability to not sphere match hobbits.
Right.
This can also be great with another great hero that I see him commonly paired with, and this is probably the most common play, is with Moblung.
Right. Yep. Definitely Moblung.
Moblung's ability is when you engage an enemy, gain a resource limit once per phase. So you just get a resource when you get that enemy in the planning phase. And then later...
That's actually a net one reason because he costs 0. And so then you put him out, Moblung gets the resource, so it gives you an extra resource.
Yeah. So there's a couple heroes. Those 3 are the ones that immediately come to mind. So a lot of Moblung decks I see because you're trying to find ways to engage enemies to just like get extra money in different phases, and this is one that lets you engage an enemy during the planning phase. So I tend to pair him when I'm doing a tactics deck fighting enemies and with Moblung. Since he is also tactics, in the Halbrad episode, we talked a little bit about there's 2 tactics traps that you put into play in your play area, and the next enemy that hits it gets trapped. There's 2. There's Outmatch is the one we named, and I forget the name of the other one.
So Outmatched is the one we talked about it last week on last episode. So that's the one where if you defend an enemy, you ready the defending character.
It's Followed,
and then the other one is Followed, right?
So if you put Followed down, it's 1 cost tactics attachment, goes into your play area, and while the attached enemy is engaged with you, you reduce the threat in the staging area by X, where X is the enemy's printed threat. Mm-hmm. So you can line it up where if you pull this 2-threat enemy that falls into the trap, during that quest phase, you'll also be reducing the threat of the staging area by 2.
Right.
So he plays pretty well with the tactics trap cards. Along also, we mentioned Forest Snare last week too, and it's the same thing. Right. Because then you're in the planning phase, so you get the enemy, then you just play the Forest Snare right away, and then enemy is no longer attacking you infinitely.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this guy is pretty good. One of the things that I did want to point out is that there are some quests of note, like Journey in the Dark, where this guy, like, you need to engage and kill a certain number of enemies, and you may be limited because the enemies aren't coming off the encounter deck, and you're like, this is a great way to kind of end around that mechanic for those certain quests. I think City of Allfast is another one. There's a couple even in the Arid Mithrin cycle. You have to engage and kill a couple enemies, or maybe
Fate of is the pack
Fate
called?
Of the Wildlands?
Yeah, that might be the name of the pack and not the name of the quest. I think it's the name of the quest.
Yeah,
let me see here.
I think you're right, but I mean, so that this guy this is tech for those particular quests. You know, what is there? 3 or 4 of them, but I don't know. You know, like.
Yeah, there's a handful, and sometimes you feel like you're not finding enemies fast enough, and this is a way to go get them, which is a really great point, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that, you know, sometimes when you feel like you're drawing dead on your cards, you know, sometimes you play drinking song just to shuffle up your deck and try to get something going. This can be that for the encounter deck, where you need something from the encounter deck to hit, and it's just not happening. It makes you feel like you're at least getting something. Like it's at least a mental boost to like, okay, we'll shuffle it up and try something else. So
yeah. So if you're a superstitious in a way, like I gotta shuffle the deck, yeah.
Right. It's still just random, right? So
right,
but
yeah, or it's not.
Or
it's
it's not. Yeah, right. It's the doom. It's the doom of men.
But yeah, Dunedain Hunter. I mean, thematically, he's hunting an enemy, right?
Yeah. The picture looks a little weird.
He fits the archetype. Yeah. What do you think of the artwork?
Before we do talk about the artwork, I will say this, just a quick rules clarification. Even though he costs 0, you still do have to have a tactics hero in play in order to, because he's not cheating himself into play, so you do need to have the tactics resource icon in order to play him.
That is a great point. If you're running mono spirit, you can't just play him. Like you need a tactics hero, or you need a hero with the tactics icon granted somehow.
Right, which is where Amarthiel comes into play, or Aragorn, one of the Aragorns with Rohirrim on. There's a lot of options out there to get a tactics icon, other than just. There's always a song battle too, but
Yep.
But the point is you can't just throw this into any old deck.
Yeah, that's a great rules point.
But. Yeah, thematically, of course, there were Dunedain Hunters, and this guy, he looks like somebody famous, and I don't know exactly who he looks like, but there's definitely reminiscent of somebody that I just can't place. Right I don't know.
If someone else sees a resemblance to a celebrity, tag us on Facebook or something. Send us a message. Nothing brings to mind to me, but he looks like your standard. He's what you expect. He's got like a bow and he's wearing like a ranger cloak. He's in some type of wooded area. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, this is a Dunedain Hunter.
If this was Cardboard of the Rings, for anybody who doesn't know, there's another show that comes out like once every 3 weeks, Cardboard of the Rings, and for a while they were talking about like characters that had bows and arrows but didn't have the ranged. Like this falls into that.
Oh yeah.
Like he's clearly holding bows and arrows and does not have the range. But whatever. I mean, this is kind of how I imagine a Dunedain Hunter, anyways. So. Should we ring this guy?
Yeah, let's put a ring around him. Let's put a ring on that finger.
Do you if you liked it, you should have put a ring on it. Yeah, if you like it, you should have put a ring on it. Anyways, for those who don't know and want to avoid me singing all of Beyonce's catalog, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card in the game to rule them all, or one of the best cards in the game, and a 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made, or a card that's not very good. And so I will start. Ted started last week, so I'm going to say typically when it comes to these cards, like how I rank them, I usually look at like how much inspiration I have to say, oh, I need to, build a deck around this, or, let me put this guy into a deck and see how he works. And I will admit this guy, even though he feels kind of like a guarded card, where you're bringing out an extra enemy from encounter cards are bad, I still don't really get inspired by this guy much. Maybe it's because, again, I admit that I'm not a huge Dunedain guy, so I kind of gloss over. And actually, tactics is the sphere that I play the least. I'm usually playing one of the other spheres. Tactics is, rightly so, the sphere that's hardest to play solo. So, or at least mono tactics. so, because of the ice, he's got great attack, and 3 hit points is great for 0 cost. But I just, he may be good, but for me, I just have to. I think I'm putting him up, near like the 7 for me. Like, you may disagree, Ted, because he's got a lot of bang for his buck for you, but this guy doesn't inspire. I do have a couple of things that I want to try him out in, but not. Like, I'm not tearing apart all my decks that I've made and being like, I gotta find room for the Dunedain Hunter.
Yeah, those are all great points. Again, he is risky, and you might not find an enemy at all, and then he leaves play right away, and then you just kind of lost a card out of your hands. He can also he can be very scenario dependent, because there are some scenarios that say the enemies will have text that say, when you engage this enemy, you have to,
right. When engaged, do some sort of
like
thing.
When engaged, deal damage to your allies, or it makes an immediate attack, or like,
well, even if you're a newbie and you just have the revised core set, and then you get this, and then you play this guy against some of the core scenarios, and you get a Hummer Horns, right? Like,
yeah,
like all of a sudden, a dead hero, right?
It's 5 damage to a hero when you engage it. So it takes a little bit of knowledge of the scenario, but I do like his ability, because he's got a strong stat line. Like, if he only had 2 attack or had 2 hit points, I'd be like, no, this guy's not worth it. But the fact that he's free and gives you good, he can soak some archery and then attack for 3. And like I said, he pairs really well with some heroes, Moblung chiefly among them. So I'm actually going to give him a 4, because if you're looking to engage enemies, like, this is the card that does it, and you get this strong ally. But he's still subject to things that target allies, like treacheries and stuff like that. Yeah, so
I mean, I do admit he's similar to Alec Glorfindel, right?
Yeah, you pay all that money, and then maybe he goes bye-bye.
Well, I mean, he's got 3 attack.
Oh, a stat line too.
1 defense. Like, he's got a bunch of hit points, so like he's similar, and he costs nothing. Except for whatever enemy you have. So.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But there you go. Yeah, give it a shot, but we advise a little bit of caution, I think.
Yeah, and I think that there's some fun ways to build a deck with him. So I'm not saying he's useless, but I'm saying that I don't love him. So anyways, everybody, we'll see you again next week as we talk about more cards in the game. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube, and there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.